Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to be talking about Star Wars Armada. We're going to be talking about General Madine. He was changed in the last update from Atomic Mass Games. We're going to talk about him a little bit and talk about what makes him interesting and ask the question, is he better or worse than he was before? Because I think the answer is both with a question mark. And it depends very much on your own point of view, viewers. You see, many of the cards we use in this game depend very greatly on your own point of view. Actually, no, they don't. The cards that I choose to talk about depend on my point of view, but your comments are what depend on your own point of view. And let me know down in the comments section below if you think this new version of Madine is better or worse, which you prefer. I'm going to talk about all the points with him and what I think he's both better and worse. And also, there's still time left to enter to win the 12 Days of Life Day giveaways. We have one more yet still to come. If you want to have a chance to enter to win, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my other videos. It's as simple as that. Any gifts that don't get claimed are going to roll over into Patreon giveaways. So patrons, you have extra opportunities to win very cool stuff. So, with all that being said, let's talk about General Madine. And when we talk about him, too, we're also going to do a little fleet build at the end of this. We'll kind of run through some cool stuff, too. So, General Madine, 30-point commander. He says, while a friendly ship is executing its first maneuver during its activation, during the determined course step, it may increase one yaw value by 1. It's this is a very simple version. He's very beginner friendly at this point. You just get 1 extra yaw every time you move. Well, the first time you move each turn, and that's an important thing because if you were to, for example, use something like the engine techs, you're not going to be able to do that. If you are getting an extra move from some other stuff, you're not going to be able to do all that fancy stuff, whether you're getting grav rifts or any kind of cool groovy effects. Those aren't going to work. It's just your first maneuver during your activation. Also has to be during your activation. If something else lets you do a move outside of your activation, for example, how the Empire has Ozzel, it wouldn't work in that case as well. Now, this is a big change from the previous version of Madine. Let's load up the previous version of General Madine, who was also 30 points. He used to say, when a friendly ship resolves a navigation command, if it spent a navigation dial, it may increase 1 additional yaw value by 1. If it spent a navigation token, it may either change its speed or increase 1 yaw value by 1. This was a 2-part command. And the cool thing was they stacked. So the big difference between these is that this version of Madine was more powerful, but had the limitation that you had to have a nav command. And that's why some people say, well, this new version is better because you don't have to nav anymore. New version just says you get 1 extra yaw. If you only had a nav dial, then it's kind of the same, right? The nav dial still gives you 1 extra yaw, and Madine still gives you 1 extra yaw. But where this version shined was when you had a nav dial and a nav token, which is definitely an easy thing to do with the Rebels, and honestly with just a lot of fleets. There are so many token generating mechanics out there. It wasn't very hard to be able to have a ship that would have both a nav token and a nav dial. The thing happened, and it was a really great way for Madine to shine, because then you could also use that secondary effect where if you also spent a token, now the token normally said you can change your speed by 1, but this gives you an alternative use for the token that lets you adjust an additional yaw value by 1. So the idea here is that if you had Madine, and if you had a token and a dial, both of the navigation persuasion, you could then have 3 yaw adjustments, and now that is rather incredible. There's the funny thing is, there's some ships that go from having very low maneuverability to having insane maneuverability that way. Look at the Liberty, for example. Liberty at speed 3 has 1 click on the first yaw, no clicks on the second yaw, and 1 click on the third yaw, the third speed. And all of a sudden now you can go from like, to like 2-2-1 or 2-1-2 or something crazy. You can really get wild maneuverability with that. And then if you add in things like, well, what did we just talk about, right? If you add in things like your engine techs, you are going to be able to then also do another maneuver. Now that one won't get extra yaw in either case. So, of course, if you're running Madine, if you have engine techs, especially on a Liberty or any ship that has 3 yaw to spare, you're going to get tremendous value out of that. That's a very cool thing. What did this change do? Really, it said, okay, we're still going to give you most of that. We're going to give you about 80% of his ability, because you won't always have a token and a nav command, or maybe you do. It depends on your build. But you're still going to be able to do a nav command and get a yaw from that, and also you could still use Madine's ability. So you traded in the token function, which now is completely gone. So you lose that extra yaw ability that you might have had from a token. You lose any real benefit, or I should say almost any real benefit from actually having a nav token with General Madine at this point. I mean, you can still change your speed by 1 with that, but you could already change your speed by 1 with the dial. So a token is really only useful if you wanted to change your speed by more than 1. Kind of. I mean, it's not exactly the same as all of that. It does mean that Nav Team can now work with Madine if you have Nav Team as your support team on here. But frankly, then that turns Madine into like a 4-point upcharge for a guy that already wasn't like super popular. But in this case, what you do gain though is you gain the ability to not have to do a nav command and still get some benefit for him. So this kind of change just makes him a lot more vanilla, in my opinion. And this kind of reflects, like, there's a certain mentality amongst with some Armada players that they just want everything to work all the time and have like guaranteed consistency on like every card. I personally don't really align with that take because I think some things need setup, and some things need skill, and some things need maybe a little bit of a luck or just the right combination of things kind of being in the right position in order to actually get the maximum benefit out of it. And under the old version of Madine, you needed to have certain things work in order to get the maximum benefit out of them. You had to have a token and you had to have a dial, and then all of a sudden you could get all of that working. And then if you had any extra things that trigger off a nav, you could also have that work as well. With this new version, he's going to work all the time, whether you do a nav or not. He's going to be more consistent. He is going to be able to trigger every single turn, and well, that's certainly a good thing as far as his ability to trigger, but I don't know if it's a good thing for the skill cap and the payoff, right? And that's kind of where this goes. It was really cool to be able to pull that off before, because you had to set up a couple of things and make it all work. And now it automatically works, so it kind of takes a little something out of it. And that's kind of why I say he's both, better and worse. It'd be like you said, oh, well, he's exactly the same, but now he's only 20 points, right? Well, it's just of course he's easier, or of course he's better, or, I don't know. I kind of liked the old way, because when I saw it work for the first time, I was blown away, and I was like, wow, that was a lot of setup to get that to work, but it's really cool, especially with the engine techs on the end. I've seen Liberties be able to perform maneuvers that were just bonkers, and we can't really get that done anymore. Not without, putting a nav team on there, and then you lose the ability to put engine techs on there. So it's not as great as it once was. So he had to sacrifice some greatness for consistency, and I liked the peaks and the abilities for greatness a little bit more than I liked the consistency. But you're free to disagree. That's just my take on it. let's talk about some of the things that are cool that he can do now. So, for example, if you no longer have to use him as a nav, you can still run him. He still works well on a Liberty. So this is a fleet that's using 2 Liberties with Madine at the helm that is allowing him to do other things. For example, we have the Mon Calamari Exodus fleet on both of these MC-80 Star Cruisers. So he's now free to do engineering commands on these guys all day long while still getting extra yaw but kind of having 2 commands at once. And that's going to be pretty darn consistent. You're going to have more consistent engineering, you're going to have more consistent repairs, and you're going to have more consistent yaw with the navigation. That's definitely better, but it takes less skill to make all of that work because it's just automatically going to happen. And that kind of is the whole crux of it. So Madine here, this is a version that I put together. I gave him Lando on the flagship because I just thought that was kind of crazy. MC-80s do have 2 braces, which is very nice, but they don't have much shields on the sides and on the rear, and they only have the 1 redirect. So they're definitely want to be front facing. They're not super durable, unless they can force you to stay right in the front. And that's kind of why the navigation with Madine was so nice once upon a time when he had that higher ceiling, because you could do a lot more to force somebody to stay into the front. But in the event that they are able to flank you, even with your enhanced maneuverability from Madine, you have Lando there for potentially really, really bad shots. Now, the MC-80 Star Cruiser that I'm using here is the more blue dice heavy of the variant. So we did give them both of these SW7 ion batteries. That means any extra of those blue accuracies you get will add a damage to the total. This also does mean that if somebody forces you to reroll blue dice, even if they end up as an accuracy, they're unspent accuracies at that point, and they will still add a damage to the total. We have Spinal Armament, which gives me an extra red on them, and also XI7 turbo lasers on both of these. XI7's always an incredibly good card. Spinal Armament is a little more situational, but again, this ship wants to be facing forward, so I think that's probably a good thing. Because it is more blue dice heavy, I didn't go with gunnery teams here. This was in 2 parts. Part of it was to save points, and part of it is that our red dice isn't super strong. So even if I can, with blue dice, typically you're not going to have 2. You don't always have 2 ships in the front arc in blue dice range. Not if your opponent's, unless your opponent has probably done something wrong. So the payoff wouldn't have been as good. We're really focusing on that one really, really big shot here for each of them. We've got Katekin and Sholin on the flagship as well, in case we do whiff and we need a little bit of dice mitigation. On the secondary one, we have Ezra Bridger on there because, hey, we're a big ship. We're large ships. We're going to run into obstacles. That's definitely going to be a thing. And both ships also have projection experts along with the Mon Calamari Exodus fleet. So they're going to be able to generate an awful lot of engineering and then use those points to send shields over to the other ship. So I can kind of fly them mostly together. They can separate a little bit, but not too far. And whichever one you decide to shoot at, the other one can they can work together as a single unit. So that's kind of the idea of this. It's fun. It allows them to still have some maneuverability while doing engineering. I also throw in a Pelta command ship in this one with Intensify Firepower. Also has projection experts, can then shore up the some of that additional engineering if need be, although we have to sort of balance on if we're going to be doing engineering or if we're going to be doing concentrate fire, because we'll probably want to do a little bit of both. I'm thinking concentrate fire on the first turn, engineering on the second turn, and things like that, probably, and then pop Intensify Firepower on turn 3 or 4, depending on when the shooting actually starts. We also have disposable capacitors on this guy. I think a lot of people might opt to try to pop the Pelta frigate as well. It's definitely something that can happen, but it's a tough little ship, and we do have 2 squadrons in here. Not a whole lot on the squadrons. I usually don't go too heavy on squadrons, but we have Tycho Selchu, and then the Gold Squadron Y-Wing. Tycho in there to be a scatter ace that can hopefully mess up with some plans a little bit, maybe get some people stranded out in a weird spot and then fly away to a station if we can manage it. And Gold Squadron, if my opponent has no squadrons or light enough squadron presence, then maybe I can punish them with a 2 blue dice bomber. It's a possibility. But if nothing else, they're just going to slow down the squadron travesty that comes in and tries to wreck these MC-80s from the flank, which is definitely a risk that this fleet takes, but hopefully we can be maneuverable enough to kind of get out of there and keep squadrons from being able to punish us too many turns in a row, while also healing up some of the damage, because maybe with projection experts and MC-80 we can get enough shields restored and shields transferred to shore up some of that damage. So that's a look at, you know, one way to maybe use Madine in his new form outside of the old form. I'll be honest with you, I preferred the old one. I've said that a couple of times already, so it's no shocker there. But the new one still has some uses. It's just a shame that it's sort of automatically happens and really doesn't require anything. But you know, it is what it is, and that's the way it is. But that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on Madine and maybe some other interesting uses for him down in the comments section below. I will talk to you later. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and a big thanks to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing and help make this whole channel worthwhile. Happy holidays to all of you guys. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all. And always wash your socks.